This is Lori Oliver, and you're listening to the Matt Ballaker Podcast.
Today's guest is a Georgia Bulldog, former Spanx professional, and co-founder of the Inactive company, the sleep performance brand. Please welcome Lori Oliver to the program. How you doing, Lori?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Matt?
I'm fairly well rested, probably not as well rested as yourself, Lori. And I want to get into that because I think sleep hygiene is important. But before we go there, can you give us a little bit of background about where you grew up, Lori?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Athens, Georgia, small town in the South that happens to be the home of the University of Georgia, where I also went to college. What brought us there as a family growing up was that my dad was an exercise physiologist. He had his PhD, and he was a professor at the university. So that's why we moved there. My mom was also a nurse at the local hospital there, very much a woman's health advocate at the time. So they both were New Yorkers transplanted to the South. And as a family, we all adjusted to the South back then by moving to Athens.
Yeah, it seems like, gosh, since COVID, there's several New Yorkers who've migrated South. So your parents were innovators. What were some of the big changes that they adjusted to moving to Athens?
I remember in our Comet station wagon driving down from where we lived to Athens, we practiced our Southern accents in the backseat. Hey, y'all. Other than that, we didn't really know what to expect. I was going into the second grade. I have a brother and a sister. I'm the middle, and we were all fairly close in age. And so, we were just kind of along for the ride, honestly. It was at the time where racial integration in the South was happening. And, we didn't really understand anything about that. It was really a small town at the time, but because it was a university town, it had educated people, culture, learning, arts as well. So it's a great place to grow up.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun move, and it's an honor to meet a fellow middle child. So you seem much more well adjusted than I am. But you're the daughter of a nurse and exercise physiologist. What were your birthday parties like? Was it only carob cookie? Like what did you eat? What did you do growing up?
Seriously, well, my mother, God love her, they're both still alive. They're in their they're 91, and my mother back in the day was all about protein. Back then. And, I was a very picky eater. So she would literally make a hamburger for me for breakfast and have me eat that because she knew it was protein that would get me through the day. So they were pretty progressive. We didn't get desserts. We always fought over any ice cream that, might have made its way into the house because of my dad. But, it was fine. Because of the sport and the health background, that balance, we were heavily into sports. Education was a big deal. Both my parents were also first generation Americans. My dad was the child of immigrants from Germany, my mom, immigrants from Cuba. And so they valued education, and sport was a big deal as well. So they threw us in sports, and, we pretty much raised ourselves.
You're an athletic girl from the beginning. What sports did you play?
A little bit of everything. My dad taught at the university's summer sports program is what it was called at the time. So we all went to that, where you just literally tried everything. And so once I graduated there, at 9 or however old I was, I did everything. I played soccer. I swam my entire life. My brother was the big swimmer and got a swimming scholarship to college, but that's where the carpool was going. So we all swam. And I played softball, horseback riding, a bit of weightlifting. My dad always emphasizing technique, of course, racquetball. We took a boat attached to our station wagon every weekend to the lake, which was about an hour away, and water skied. And that was our family activity, family time. And then I was a cheerleader. It was fun. And it was a big deal to be a cheerleader, especially in such a good, big SEC, football town. So
I think, that other than maybe being the starting quarterback, that's pretty much the apex of.
And I was captain. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we have to redo the start of the show to say she's a former cheerleader captain, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I like hearing that your father emphasized technique and your mother focused on protein, because it seems, and better than me, within nutrition, there's so many fads. I remember growing up, they talked about, make sure you get enough carbohydrates, or, like fats were really the enemy. And now that's changed, and the pyramid now looks like a joke. But I mean, as a kid, the food pyramid was sort of like the Bible. When it
Yeah.
comes to like meal planning, I guess what are some tenets of nutrition that you stand by and you think will persist over time?
I do think that protein is a big deal. I buy into that. My kids, who are young adults, will tell you that I didn't practice what I preached when I raised them because I also work full time and they had their share of Lunchables. But, processed food, I think, eating naturally is possible. Convenience is great, but you can conveniently prepare whole foods. I mean, you just can. You just have to learn. So I think I stand by that. And obviously, in terms of nutrition, hydration, I still struggle with that. I'm sitting here with a glass of water trying to force myself to drink, but hydration is a huge deal. As I age, especially, I realize that if I'm hydrated, I actually look healthier. I look better more and I feel better. So hydration and then just a balanced diet and moderation. I ate
Mhm.
Mike and Ike's before I came up here. I mean, I'll eat a little bit of sugar. I know it's my weakness. Moderation is something that I think we've sort of lost sight for in general. Bro. You hear a lot about absolutely zero alcohol,
Yeah.
absolutely zero sugar. I'm kind of like, when you get to have fun. So moderation, I think, should
I,
be part of the tenets of healthy living.
Thank you for saying that. About a year ago, I did the Whole30, and I
Oh,
think I was the most annoying person to be around for that month.
yeah, it just makes you
Since
miserable.
then, yeah, I got better results. It took maybe a month longer, but I just started tracking macros and calories on my Fitness Pal. I'm sure there's other apps. This is an endorsement of that, but I'm just a nicer person, and I think drinking water helps. But I think I like what you said, because with Whole30, if you miss one day, you're supposed to start again. And this is like, all right, if you have some cake or if you have some Mike and Ike's because you're going on a podcast, so who cares? Just maybe balance it out later the day, or tomorrow. So thank you for saying that. I like anything that reaffirms my existing beliefs. So I really appreciate that. So we're curious. So you enrolled in Georgia. What did you study there?
I graduated with a degree in journalism. I chose journalism because I knew I could write. I was a competent
Mhm.
communicator orally and in writing. I had gotten reinforcement in that in high school. I didn't, blow the doors off of the SAT or my high school GPA or anything, but I knew I could write. I also thought it was interesting that, well, I figured that if I had a journalism degree and I knew how to write, I could pretty much say I was qualified for a lot of jobs. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't really heading toward being an on-air talent, journalist or anything, but I thought, yeah, if I can write well and communicate well, I should be able to figure something out.
Writing and communication, even before ChatGPT, were very important skills. What was your first real job, for lack of a better word?
Well, my first real job in high school was as a lifeguard. I lifeguarded at a city pool that was attached to a public housing project. And I mentioned that because it was a great learning experience. I mean, I really, probably my first direct experience without me knowing it at the time in knowing your customer. We had 5 lifeguards on duty all the time at this 25-yard pool. It wasn't like it was a super pool or anything, but any given day we would have more than 200 swimmers, no adults. People would send 3-year-old kids with their 5-year-old siblings to the pool. And so what we did was not only have to actually act as lifeguards, I mean, you made a save every day, but also learned about building community and, tried to. I worked there actually probably 4 summers and high school and early college. And we got to know the kids. We created other activities sort of around the pool, that we did. And with them, we learned about their lives. And it was great. It was a great experience.
Wow. So you started off with probably the most pressure filled job. I guess maybe outside of working on the emergency room or being a first responder. I mean, in some cases, you are the first responder. Like,
Yeah.
what
Well,
I guess traits or kind of mental tactics can people who maybe aren't lifeguards learn from someone who was on the front lines like you?
flexibility. I mean, this was a population that I wasn't unfamiliar with. I went to public school, participated in sports that were truly integrated, and I wasn't afraid of kids from all different walks of life. And I
Mhm.
certainly wasn't. I mean, I had very middle class upbringing, and I think what I learned is flexibility. Just really looking at how I can add value every day. I mean, like, I remember a lot of these kids' names to this day. We had a kid named Larry who he was arrested for something fairly minor, but the day he got out of jail, he came to the pool because he wanted to see us. I mean, it's cool. Everybody just getting to know these kids and then engaging them and making summer fun for them. They were sort of sent to the pool as their babysitter. And so I think
Yeah.
learning how to make the most of that for all of us and have fun.
That's an important lesson. And Larry, if you're listening, I hope you subscribe. It's great to have you on board. So you start off lifeguarding. You completed your undergraduate work at Georgia, and then what?
So the entire time I lived in Athens, which I told you was, from when I was about 7 until through graduation from college, I kept thinking this place is a little suffocating. There has to be more.
Mm.
We didn't travel a lot as a family. So when I graduated, I decided I was going to move to Los Angeles. And I didn't
Mm.
know anybody in Los Angeles. I just thought that'd be a big place to move to and see what was happening. So my first job out of college was actually, I was lucky enough through kind of family connection. My uncle had been in the military with someone who worked at a big Fortune 50 corporation. At the time, it was a big government contractor. And so I was able to hire in as, what they called at the time a communications specialist. They gave me a top secret clearance, and I was writing a lot of proposals to the government for the projects that we were working on. And so, we had a lot of ex military folks that were employees as well. And apparently, they don't teach you to write well in the military. I'm not sure, haven't confirmed that, but didn't feel like it. But so I did that for a couple of years. And then that same company also happened to have what they were calling information systems company, and that was based in Anaheim, and it was a big credit repository. So they were gathering all the financial data, early computer mainframe days, on everybody, and then spinning out businesses using that kind of data. One of the businesses of interest to them and where I hired in was in starting a company that was based on real estate loan services. So anybody who
Mhm.
bought a house, has to get appraisals and mortgage documents and title
Mhm.
insurance and those kinds of things. And there was not a national provider of all those services. It was very much a cottage industry based on the particular document that was needed. So we consolidated the services and became this national provider. So 12 of us, me and my 25-year-old self, included, I know I was the youngest, but started this company and we grew it in 3 years, by a lot of acquisition too, but to $360 million. So
Wow.
that was, definitely my first introduction to entrepreneurship, but also, within, we had the comfort of the big funding source, of a Fortune 50 company at the time, but it was a great experience. A lot of lessons there for sure.
Wow, that's a huge revenue number
I know.
in such a
I know.
short period of time. Yeah, our listeners want to know what sticks out about that time. What was a big learning experience?
Risk taking. I was definitely hired in above my competency. So I had either raise my hand and get out or level up. And so I just learned everything I could and took risks. I was the manager of marketing communications as I started and tested and learned. I'd kind of do something small that didn't take a lot of budget. Maybe nobody would
Mhm.
notice if it failed, but I threw it out there even then before lean startup happened culture. And and I learned from it. And I'd say, all right, I'm not doing that. Or yes, that worked. Let's do more of that. And
Mhm.
because we were growing largely by acquisition, I learned from the companies that we acquired. I mean, they were actually bigger than what we were when we started, as they came in. So I just opened my ears, shut my mouth, and tried to learn as much as I could. And I feel like I got a great education.
That's advice I need to learn. Shut my mouth, listen, and learn. So that one of these decades, I'll figure it out, Lori.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you're no longer in loan processing. So what was the next chapter for you, Lori?
the next chapter was, well, at the time in Los Angeles and Orange County, I was married to a police officer. I got married when I was 23. Do not recommend. Um, you know, police life turns out is hard. Being from Athens, Georgia. I didn't really know what it involved. We did not lock our door. We
Mm.
certainly didn't have guns at home or anything. And I didn't know about gangs and that sort of thing. So that was pretty stressful. And I was married 5 years to this police officer turned detective and was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And had a child. And about the time of Rodney King, I just sort of had to call uncle. It was just it's just a tough culture, tough lifestyle, and I could not see raising a family, children inside of it. And so when I got a divorce, I decided I better move back to closer to family. I had a 16-month-old, so I moved back to Atlanta. And for the second time in my life, I used a resume to get a job. And I started an agency, a stint of working with different marketing, advertising, progressive ideation companies. So I did that for quite some time. So I had big company experience. I had this little entrepreneurial pocket inside the big company. And then was working with agencies, which is basically consulting. And I did that. We worked on the Olympics, worked with a lot of the Olympic sponsors because the Olympics were in Atlanta in 1996. And got a great education there, reunited with my high school sweetheart, married again, and had two more kids. And so I really spent the next 20 years, let's call it, in different iterations of consulting and working for different companies, and all really through relationships. I mean, at that point, when I say I've used my resume twice to get jobs, I'm not kidding. Every other opportunity I'd gotten professionally came through a relationship that I had or
Mhm.
still have. So, did that.
Yeah, I think that's a common through line with a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not finding the right job on LinkedIn.
No.
It's leveraging your relationships.
Yes.
So we're curious. You worked at Spanx, which
Mhm.
is I think the woman who started was, please correct me if I'm wrong, one of the youngest self-made billionaires.
Right, Sarah Blakely.
Yeah. So obviously major badass guru.
Totally.
How did you get involved in that, and what was that like?
When I turned 50, and I'll just go ahead and say it, I'm old, I decided to become an entrepreneur again, on my own. I was inspired by my own daughter, and I decided I developed products with companies that I consulted with
Mhm.
previously. So I was dangerously knowledgeable, but I also was interested in developing a line of, it's not fair to call it shapewear, but support wear for younger girls. So we weren't
Uh-huh.
trying to shape them into something they're not, but I was noticing
Mhm.
my daughter in middle school, for example, on her lacrosse team, she would wear her lacrosse shorts under her prom dress for dances. She just was looking for
Mhm.
a little bit of smoothness. She would wear 2 sports bras to bed sometimes when she wasn't feeling well, and so there
Mhm.
were things that were happening, and I big mentor for especially middle school girls my entire career, and so I noticed this, it wasn't my daughter wasn't unique. She was doing what a lot of these girls were doing. They're like, "There's really nothing for us to feel sort of supported." Thanks was kind of really compressing people at that time, but I thought it'd be cool to develop a line, a brand, because I had a brand background that not only had consumer products for girls that met their specific needs, but also was a brand that could help redefine feminism. I mean, that was
Mhm.
the generation that I thought should be redefining feminism for the future. So, became an entrepreneur, developed this whole brand and a platform, developed the products, a whole capsule collection of products. In that process, kind of, on the same side of town as where I am, Sarah Blakely was about midway through her journey with Spanx. She was a, you know, billion-dollar company already and just killing it, and had one child and was also kind of ready to step back somewhat from the day-to-day operation of the company. Long story short, she hired somebody from Nike. Well, that person was peers with one of my best friends from my Los Angeles days. I had hired her husband for his very first job out of college back at my first job. And we had stayed friends since. She talked with the woman who was soon to become the new president CEO of Spanx and said, I know somebody in Atlanta. Let me hook you up. And then we sort of said, she's doing something in the same zone as Spanx, but we're not going to worry about that. I wasn't worried about
Mhm.
it. I was worried about integrating an outside person into the South who was very nervous about being in the South. And she was a mom, she had first graders and all that sort of stuff. So I became friends with this new person incoming just to help her negotiate the city of Atlanta. In the process, down the road, she finally said to me, "Tell me what you're doing." And so as I shared what I was doing, she said, "You need to meet Sarah." So I end up meeting Sarah. And because I think of the combination of my corporate and my consulting and my entrepreneur background, I think Sarah knew that I understood kind of her challenge. She needed to create a personal brand. Her mission was to still help Spanx,
Mhm.
but she needed to do things that I kind of knew how to do or help her do.
Mhm.
So I met Sarah and it was over. I mean, she's great, and we collaborated. I ran her incubator and helped her with uh, several projects, and it was great. It was a wonderful experience. Was on the leadership team at Spanx, so I had, some influence on the core business as well. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a million Harvard Business School case studies about Spanx, or there will be if there aren't already. But you were actually on the front lines, so to speak. I guess now that it's huge success, it's maybe easy to say like just do X, Y, and Z. But it still is it's a very competitive industry. What do you think were some of the keys to making Spanx stick out in such a crowded field?
First of all, Sarah's fearless. And I feel like I got a PhD in sales getting to know her and seeing her, operate from a front row seat. She's amazing, literally amazing. But at the same time, I think what was important was this learning that nobody knows everything. Not even Sarah, who had already achieved this level of success, knew everything, but she reveled in that. Like, she loved to ask people questions. She treated everything like potential inspiration. And I thought that was amazing. I mean, it was curiosity plus, it was this idea that I want to learn from you, but it might inspire me too. And so
Mhm.
this idea that you don't have to know everything, but be open to everything is inspiration was my biggest takeaway.
I like that. You don't have to know everything. I can just leave it off that. You don't have to know everything. As mentioned, you look very well rested.
Thank you.
I could probably use better sleep. It's something I've struggled with. Gotten better over the years, but please tell us how you got involved with the Inactive company.
When I left Spanx, I left because Sarah had to go back into the core business. There was a period of time with this new CEO, and then Sarah rejoined the company for a lot of reasons. I was not in a place in my life where I felt like doing that too. I had this nice little cushy job on the side, and I liked it that way because I had 3 kids and we were very busy as a family. I decided, we did this nice little organized exit out, and I decided what I did like about one of the special things about working with Sarah is really getting to know consumer good entrepreneurs. She's very philanthropic. And so I had a lot of exposure to consumer good entrepreneurs where I realized that they don't get a lot of support. Everything was about tech startups. You get, tech incubators and whatever, and nobody was really helping consumer goods entrepreneur startups. So I
Mhm.
created a consulting firm that did focus on consumer startups. And, what I understood was the unique timelines, the manufacturing and other resources that they need. There's a lot of things just around developing a physical product that are different. So in that journey, I met a wannabe entrepreneur that wanted to do sleep masks. And I was like, wait, what? And I was a sleep struggler at the time.
Mhm.
I mean, I come from the sleep when we're dead. And, I had to travel the world. I worked full time for a long time and I was raising a family. So there wasn't a lot of room for 7 to 9 hours every single night. And I just lived with that. But when this person made me aware of the sleep mask, a light went off and I was kind of like, well, that's very parallel to what Sarah Blakely of Spanx did with the girdle. She literally created this new category of shapewear by reinventing a product that was 100 years old. Turns out the sleep mask has been around about 100 years and no one really had innovated it. And the more I learned about sleep, the more I thought, this is perfect. I mean, I started using a sleep mask and I started realizing what the opportunities were as I learned more about sleep. And I just started using sort of all of my experience and asking questions about how sleep actually works. Complete darkness, for example, is one critical, the most critical element to signal your brain and your body to go to sleep. Well, these little flimsy sleep masks don't provide complete darkness. So I decided I was going to take this on. The person that brought me the idea ended up not really having the stomach for the innovation process because it does take time. But as I was developing the mask itself, Jill McRae, whom I had met at Spanx, as we were both on the leadership team, we were friends. She came, and both moms, we had a lot of similarities, both insomniacs. We decided to do this together. So that's how we started the company, really focused on trying to create a science backed, simple, ergonomically designed, portable, and accessibly priced sleep aid that was drug free. So that's how we started.
Wow. I mean, you mentioned like Spanx and the girdle as a reinvention. This is probably some version of covering your eyes has probably been around since the beginning of time. And so to be able to differentiate it to a point where people are willing to pay more for it or buy it more often, like that seems like such a heroic task. Like, how'd it happen?
Well, first of all, I think this kind of stuff is fun.
Like,
But what we did first was ask a lot of questions. We did all sorts of consumer surveys. We talked to people who struggle with sleep. We talked to people who slept well. We talked
mhm,
to the very few people at the time that actually had tried a sleep mask because only about 10% of people really had tried a mask. And this is pre COVID. So nobody certainly had ever put anything over their mouths, much less their eyes. But we talked to people who had tried them, and realized there were a lot of high performers that kind of got it quickly. But then we decided, okay, if we really want to do this, it has to have certain characteristics. In addition to being able to allow any wearer to customize it to their unique facial features so that they can get this critical, complete darkness, we should add some kind of temperature regulation. That's the second most important factor. Circadian rhythm, you go through your circadian rhythm. As you begin to wake up, your temperature rises, and everybody's talked about getting so hot and waking up. Well, if you can
yeah.
keep your face temperature down a little cooler, you can sleep longer. And then people talked about having Velcro sticking, their hair, and or little metal pieces that were bumps, as they tried to sleep on their backs or their sides, and all these comfort type features. So we just started creating what we thought kind of fit the bill, and we had manufacturing contacts from previous days. So took about a year to develop the sleep mask. We wanted to be hardware free on the strap. We wanted the strap to accommodate any type of hair. If you have braids or a pony, you want to pull through, or if you just simply want to wear the mask higher or lower so it felt better on
Mhm.
your head. We wanted to just accommodate all the things we heard. And once we had a prototype, we did a test with Emory University during COVID, was doing an IRB, which is sort of a sanctioned research study. It's done by an internal review board. That's what it stands for,
Okay.
with military veterans through the Wounded Warriors program. And so we were able to be part of that study using the sleep mask. So we got great feedback there, even with PTSD and other comorbidities and problems that, veterans had. They were able to wear the mask and achieve better sleep. We also did a third party consumer study with people who slept fewer than 7 hours. And then we did a study with the University of Georgia football team, and that went well. After we did that, University of Georgia bought all of our prototypes, and we were in business.
And they did win a national championship. I'm not saying one had anything to do with the other. I don't know the
Of course
exact
it did.
timing, but you guys can connect the dots. There's obviously melatonin, a lot of over the counter products. There's stuff that requires prescriptions. The industry seems like highly saturated, but you're offering a drug free product. Like, um, is that simplicity? I mean, it's obviously a feature, but what were some of the challenges to kind of get people to say, all right, you don't need to go too crazy on this. Just wear this. What worked?
Yeah. Going first to high performers. So, like the athletic
Mhm,
market, they got it quickly. Especially our mask retails for $45, but we obviously provide team discounts. And so, at the prices we were offering, if you bought 100, 200, 300 sleep masks, it was super accessible. It's barely a budget line item.
mhm,
And we also put the school's logo on the mask and encourage them to supply these as performance equipment. So the players, I've raised two boys, and
Mm.
these college boys, especially, their brains are not fully developed. Let's just leave it at that when they're in school. And so you kind of have to say, you can't police, you can't go into their bedrooms and coach them there at night. But if you say, this is like your helmet, this is standard issue performance equipment. I need you to wear this at night, when lights out,
Mhm.
put on your sleep mask so it gets you off your phone, any other
Yeah.
devices. That worked. It was a super short sales cycle.
That works. You're not gonna see what your roommate's doing. You have your own focus. There's a lot of benefits to
And
this.
if you're
I have
traveling,
2 boys m Yes, I have 2 boys myself. One falls asleep like, like a light switch. The other, maybe he needs this mask. A lot of talk and about the importance of sleep hygiene. I know avoiding screens a certain amount of hours before bedtime, not drinking too much water. Other than wearing this mask, what are some tips that you live by, Lori, when it comes to sleep hygiene?
yeah. So, going off of the idea of light being so important, the biggest learning I've had is that good sleep starts the morning before the night.
Mm,
So I'm a big advocate for morning sunlight. And what I do now and have done for the past 2 years is have my cup of coffee outside,
oh,
and just gets morning light into my eyes. If it's raining or if it's super, super cold, you can sit by a window. But what natural light does in the morning is sets your circadian rhythm for the entire day and kind of sets you up for some success as you go to sleep at night. Conversely, in the evening, low light. Start doing,
mm,
less light. You need less light in your eyes, particularly blue light. So what I do now is turn down all my lamps to a lower level in the evening. Even if I'm watching TV, my husband and I are watching TV or whatever, we sit there without other lights on or at very low levels and just start to get our brains accustomed to this idea of it's getting close to when we are going to sleep. And then about an hour before bedtime, no TV at all, no devices, no blue light getting into your eyes. And then, at night, especially, sometimes I don't wear a mask if I'm just exhausted and I can do that to myself. I can, spend the entire day and just wear myself out. So I'm asleep. But if I do struggle at all, I do have a sleep mask that I can pop on and get the complete darkness. It's almost become Pavlovian by now. You see the mask, you put it on, your whole body just kind of says, okay, it's time to go to bed. Just relax. Get those ruminating thoughts just need to calm down. And so there's that signal that's not only physical, the act of putting on the mask and getting the darkness, but also psychological, where it's
yeah.
your brain's told, go to sleep, damn it. So those
So
through the day, that's what I'm trying to do.
okay, so it makes sense. You start off in the morning with some sunshine and coffee. That sounds way better than being in gridlock. Then you kind of dim the lights in the evenings. You're not with your partner, looking at doom scrolling, TikTok while you're in bed. You actually like put the devices away. Is there any aspect of sleep science that has particularly surprised you, Lori?
I think it's that the more stressed out you get about sleep, the harder it's going to be to get good sleep. I'm all for, I don't wear a whoop or an aura ring or any of those kind of things. I try to just listen to my body. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but do it if that helps you regulate your own body. If it becomes a chore and you wake up and you got a bad score and you have a bad day because of
Mhm.
it, I'll tell you,
Yeah,
a lot of the players even tell us that they want natural solutions. And so I think the biggest thing for me is listen to your body and know your body.
I like that. Listen to your body, know it, and don't get in a bragging competition about how many hours you slept the night before. That's
Yeah,
kind of annoying.
exactly. Well, and buy into sleep culture. It is so, we haven't even really said yet, but I do want to make sure we say sleep is the foundation of health. I mean, the reason we're called the Inactive Company it's because our mission was to make people realize that your body is working harder when you're doing nothing and you're asleep than you
Mhm.
actually are. It's actually working when you're working out. I mean, every single system in your body and your brain are involved through sleep. There's cleansing happening, there's growth happening, there's mood regulation, there's memory consolidation, there's, you name it, it's happening while you're sleeping. So sleep is productive. And, the sooner people really kind of absorb that as a concept, the better off they'll be.
Absolutely. Sleep is productive. Write it down, live it. What have you done professionally that you're most proud of?
What comes to mind is that I think I've set a good example for my kids. I have kept myself busy and I've tried to do things professionally that are additive to the world. I didn't want to create a product ever that the world didn't need another one of. So I think I'm proud that I have, and our sleep mask even has a utility patent. So it's objectively speaking, we've invented a product that really is different and unique and hopefully helps people and is at a price that a lot of people can afford.
Yeah, and it's a nice marriage of your parents' skills too.
Yeah, yeah,
That's healthy and good for you.
that's
I
right.
guess healthy and good, but nurses and exercise gurus would like it.
Exactly.
What are you particularly optimistic about?
I am optimistic that people will begin to adopt sleep culture as a productive thing. I'm optimistic that people realize we're all better humans if we're well rested. We're in better moods. We can take life's ups and downs more steadily. So I'm optimistic that with the growing number of people that are saying yes, I do want to, I value sleep and I will get better sleep, that we will all become stronger and more steady as people.
If we can get stronger, steadier, more emotionally stable people, that's a mark on the world I'd like to see happen.
100%.
Where can people learn about you, the product? They might have hundreds of millions of dollars they need to put to good use. Where can we funnel them more?
Please go to inactiveco.com. That's our website. And take a look. We have our Sleep 7 playbook on the website, which is free, has 7 steps that are simple but grounded in science that can hopefully help you sleep better if you struggle. And then, of course, you can buy the Inactivator sleep mask and you get a preview of our apparel. We actually had sold out of a limited capsule of a sleep apparel that we had, and so we're on reorder. So look out for that. But inactiveco.com.
Check it out. Lori Oliver, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.